Good morning, fifth grade. I hope you enjoyed your 2-hour delay. We are going to jump right in and continue with Esperanza Chapter 5. Before we get started, we want you to do some thinking that will help you get ready for what's about to happen in our chapter. And it says, what's your favorite place in the world? How would you feel if you could never go there again? Why? So take 2 minutes, write down 3 to 4 sentences answering each part of the question. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the focus question. Today we're going to focus on how does Esperanza respond to her experience on the train to California. What does this reveal about her as a person? And so we know that Esperanza has gone through a lot of changes in her life over the past couple of days. Her father died, there was a long funeral, then her house burned down, and now she's lost everything, and she has to sneak away across the border into California. And so we are going to focus on and pay attention to how she deals with this experience and how what she's experiencing right now is very different from the life that she's used to. All right, our vocabulary words for today are monotonous, and that it means dull or boring. And this lady is playing a monotonous game, really boring game. The second one is scorn, and that's when you feel dislike for someone, kind of like throwing shade at someone. And then 3, the last one is undulating, and that's to move in a wave-like motion or have a wavy shape or outline. And so these mountains are undulating. They kind of have a wavy shape or outline. All right, as we're reading, we're going to use our CSPS strategy to keep track of our thinking and just think. These are the level 1 questions, like what is going on in the text, and we're going to use our CSPS strategy for that. So turn in your books to where we left off yesterday. That is page, I believe it's page 65, okay? And I'm actually going to back up a little bit to page 63. And it tells us, just kind of go over a part that you might not have read. Hortensia is telling the story about how Miguel saved her and Esperanza when burglars came into their house and he released this mouse. And so her dad asked, what do you want? What do you want to do because you saved my daughter's life? And he said he wanted to go on a train ride. It's at the bottom of page 63. Okay, and so now Esperanza is having, she's having a flashback or a memory of the train ride, and she and Miguel got to get all dressed up to go on the train. And Miguel really loves trains, and they were both excited. And in the once they got into the train, they were waving goodbye to everyone, and it was super nice, like leather seats, and they were bouncing up and down, and they're really nice clothes, and they ate in the dining car that had like nice linens and crystal and silver, and everyone else was dressed like all fancy, and they were just like telling them how cute they were. And so she's remembering that happy time, and then in the middle of page 65, she's like, but that's not why I'm going to Zacchaeus this time. She's like, I'm not going there on a special trip with my father. Instead, I'm going there hidden in a wagon, and my father's dead. And so this is like another example of her grieving. She had this like great memory of her father, and now she realizes, wow, that will never happen again. And so we're going to pick up here when they get to the train station. And remember, we're trying to focus on, how does she respond to this experience on the train? This experience is going to be very different from what she remembers what a train ride is like. And we want to think about, why is her experience so different, and why does she respond the way she does? And so we're going to start at the bottom of page 65. Esperanza stood at the station in Zacchaeus, tugging at the second-hand dress. Didn't fit properly, and was the most awful yellow. And even though they had been out of the wagon for some hours, she still smelled like guavas. And so the author is comparing the way Esperanza looks and feels now to how she looked and felt her first time on a train with her father. And so it tells us, she remembered the time, when she wore this beautiful silk dress. And now this time she's on a train, she has a second-hand dress or a hand-me-down dress, and it doesn't fit, and she thinks it's ugly, and she smells. All right? It had taken them 2 days to arrive in Zacchaeus, but finally that morning they left the wagon hidden in a thicket of shrubs and trees, and walked into town. After the discomfort of the wagon, she was looking forward to the train. All right, and so that's another clue about Esperanza. And so when we're thinking about who's describing her, we could say, Esperanza is looking forward to the train ride at Zacchaeus, but she doesn't like what she's wearing, and she smells like guavas. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And you can choose one of these two quotes I have highlighted to support your answer. Okay, and now we're looking for the setting. We know Esperanza is on the train leaving Zacchaeus. Esperanza is on the train leaving Zacchaeus. Press pause to write down your answer for number 2 and play when you're ready. And now we're going to focus on describing the train car that she's in, and we're going to add that to the setting. Remember, last time she was in a train car, the seats were leather, and the dining cars had white linens and fine crystal, and everyone was dressed up, okay? But now we know Esperanza's not in a fine dress. She's in an old hand-me-down dress. And let's see where she has to sit in the train. Let's continue reading at the top of page 66. The locomotive arrived, pulling a line of cars and hissing and spewing steam, but they did not board the fancy car with the compartments and leather seats, or the dining car with the white linens. Instead, this is a key word. The author's comparing her experience, her previous experience, to what she's doing now, and this is really important. Alfonso led them to a car with rows of wooden benches, like church pews facing each other, already crowded with peasants. Trash littered the floor, and it reeked of rotting fruit and urine. A man with a small goat on his lap grinned at Esperanza, revealing no teeth. 3 barefoot children, 2 boys and a girl, crowded near their mother. Their legs were chalky with dust. Their clothes were in tatters, which means their clothes were old and worn out, and they had rips that hadn't been patched. And their hair was grimy. An old, frail beggar woman pushed by them to the back of the car. Okay, so I want you to add these details to the setting. The train car has wooden benches. It's crowded with peasants or poor people. There is trash on the floor, and it smells like gross food and urine. And you can add this quote in the box for number 2. We're going to continue reading, and we're going to look out for the problem that Esperanza faces. And we already kind of have a clue, because now she's on the dirty part of the train. She didn't get to go to the nice car. She had to go to the dirtier car. And now you should be thinking, well, like, why can't she go to the nice car? And if we think back, in this next paragraph, it's going to kind of explain, how Esperanza is going to react to being in this car. It says, Esperanza had never been so close to so many peasants before. When she went to school, all of her friends were like her. When she went to town, she was escorted and hurried around any beggars. And the peasants always kept their distance. That was simply the way it was. She couldn't help but wonder if they would steal her things. So now I'm thinking, and that's because Esperanza used to be rich. She was very wealthy, and now she's lost everything, so she can't afford to go to the fancy car. She can't afford to buy tickets that will put her in a car away from the poor people. Now she is actually one of the poor people, and she doesn't realize that yet. Let's keep reading. Mama, said Esperanza, stopping in the doorway, we cannot travel in this car. It is not clean, and the people do not look trustworthy. Esperanza saw Miguel frown as he edged around her to sit down. Mama took her hand and guided her to an empty bench where Esperanza slid over next to the window. Papa would never have had us sit here, and Abuelita wouldn't approve, she said stubbornly. Mija, it is all we can afford. We must make do. It is not easy for me either. But remember, we are going to a place that will be better than living with Tio Luis, and at least we will be together. The train pulled out and settled into a steady motion. Hortensia and Mama took out their crocheting. Mama was using a small hook and white cotton thread to make carpetas, lace dollies, to put under a lamp or a vase. She held up her work to Esperanza and said, would you like to learn? Esperanza shook her head. Why did Mama bother crocheting lace? They had no vases or lamparas to put on top of them. Esperanza leaned her head against the window. She knew she did not belong here. She was Esperanza Ortega from El Rancho de las Rosas. She crossed her arms tight and stared out the window. Okay, and now we see Esperanza's problem really come to life. And this is an inner problem. It's not an outer problem. It's a problem that she's dealing with inside herself. And we know that she is struggling with being poor. Write that down for box 3. Esperanza is struggling with being poor. And the fact that she is on the train in the less expensive car and she's upset about it lets us know that she's really struggling with this. She thinks the people are untrustworthy. And the quote you can write down to support your answer is the one I have highlighted here. All right. And that is at the top of page 68. Let's keep going. For hours, Esperanza watched the undulating land pass in front of her. Everything seemed to remind her of what she had left behind. The nopales reminded her of Abuelita, who loved to eat the prickly pear cactus, sliced and soaked in vinegar and oil. The dogs from small villages that barked and ran after the train reminded her of Marisol, whose dog, Capitan, chased after trains the same way. And every time Esperanza saw a shrine decorated with crosses, flowers, and miniature statues of saints next to the rails, she couldn't help but wonder if it had been someone's father who died on the tracks, and if somewhere there was another little girl who missed him too. All right, and so we know Esperanza doesn't really solve her problem, but instead she spends the rest of the train ride remembering her father and grieving his loss. And you can use this quote to help you. Next, start your paragraph. How does Esperanza respond to her experience on the train to California? And what does this reveal about her as a person?